Okay, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get our program started today. I want to welcome you to our October General Membership Luncheon. My name is Colin Hastings. I'm the Executive Director of the Pasco Chamber of Commerce. And as you all know by now that our program features a forum with the candidates for Franklin County Commissioners 1 and 2. Also want to recognize our sponsor today, Columbia Basin Paper and Supply. So with that, if you don't mind rising and joining me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Thank you. You can have a seat. I'd like to take a moment to recognize elected officials that have joined us here today. From Franklin County, we have Commissioner Brad Peck. Go ahead and give Brad a round of applause, please. We have Commissioner Bob Cook. And Franklin County Commissioner Rick Miller. And Rick is happy to not be on the hot seat today, I bet. We have Franklin County Auditor Matt Beaton. Franklin County Treasurer Josie Kelzer. I saw Josie. Franklin County Prosecutor Sean Sant. Franklin County Sheriff Jim Raymond. There's Jim. From the Port of Pasco, we have Commissioner Gene Reichman. And also from the Port of Pasco, we have Commissioner Jim Clinworth. And lastly, we have Franklin PUD Commissioner Stu Nelson. Can't miss him, he's right there. Welcome today. So happy that you're here to join us to watch this spirited debate. Anybody watch the debate last night? I didn't either. I didn't really want to. I can guarantee you that this debate will be much more civil, at least from what I saw in the paper today, but still will be very informative, and it's a testament to you to be out here to learn more about very important elections here locally. One quick announcement, or a couple of announcements that I want you to be aware of. One, we have a small business success series coming up here at the Red Lion. I think it's November 12th, 13th? November 17th. I was going to say that. November 17th. So put that on your calendar. It's free for business owners or anybody who wants to learn a little bit more to attend. And there is a lunch that goes along with it, so it is a free lunch. Also, our Eastern Washington Ag Expo is rapidly approaching, even though we're still in October. We're working really hard to get that together, and that's January 3rd and 4th at Track. And a couple weeks after that, on January 19th, will be our Mid-Columbia Ag Hall of Fame, which will be here. If you know someone that is in the ag industry and deserves recognition for the efforts that they do in the community, we're taking nominations now. So contact the Pasco Chamber if you need some more information. It's on our website. If you need help with the nomination too, we want to make sure it's not a daunting sort of process, so we can help you out with that. Give us a call if there's somebody that you have in mind, and we'd be happy to walk you through that. And so now, since we have a packed program, I'd like to invite Derek Brownson, of Community First Bank, the 2016-17 president of the Pasco Chamber of Commerce, and I think the only banker in the room, since it's Columbus Day. So let's give a round of applause for Derek for taking over.
Thank you, Colin. And it sounds like you missed one more elected official. Okay. So Mike Killian, welcome. As our sponsors today, Columbia Basin Paper and Supply. Janice, would you like to come in and speak?
We got a big agenda, so we'll be really brief. I'm Janice Hastings. My husband, Reagan, he's the brains. Anyway, I wanted to thank everyone here. This is such an honor to be the sponsor for this luncheon because local issues are the most important and we all need to do a better job of taking care of what's going on locally. Homegrown is the best. I wanted to share with you that our business, as of August, started its 69th year in this community. And I can verify that we've been chamber members at least 50 of those 69 years. I hate to embellish. I think it's longer, but I don't have my facts. So we are true, diehard, loyal Pasco Chamber of Commerce members. We appreciate all of our customers, and we try to do our best to give you the best value and the best service that we possibly can, but we're the little mom and pop store in the unassuming building downtown Pasco. So there's propaganda on the table, candy bars, pens, and reorder stickers. Anybody that answers the phone can help you, whether it's a quote or a delivery or a problem. If they can't, then I need you to call and tell me. But anyway, we just want to, we're very, very thankful and very appreciative to our community. We're very loyal. We live here. We're going to end up out the cemetery like everybody else. But anyway, we are very, very appreciative, and we're very, very proud to be longstanding Pasco Chamber of Commerce members. So thank you very much.
What she said. Thank you. Thank you, Janice and Reagan. And the Pasco Chamber of Commerce appreciates all the support from you over the years. Now I'd like to introduce Ed Dawson, who's going to be our moderator today from Kona Radio. Ed?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me. I want to special thanks to the Greater Pasco Area Chamber of Commerce, including but not limited to Colin Hastings and Derek Brownson for this opportunity. Shameless plug, I have a couple of our cards at the table. Grab one on your way out. I also will be brief in getting this going because that's why most of us came, is for this candidate forum for the two positions that you will be electing in the Franklin County Commissioner's race. Just a couple of brief reminders that the ballots will be mailed out in the next week, and of course the votes will be tallied November 8th. You can also watch the rebroadcast of this forum on the Pasco City television station or on channel 191 on Charter Cable here in Pasco and online as well. You can go to www.pasco-wa.gov/PSC-TV. So a couple of the ground rules. Each candidate will have about a 90-second opening as well as a closing. Each candidate will be asked a series of questions that some of you filled out cards, and we want to acknowledge Jesse and Sam. They'll be going around collecting those if you want to have your question asked by each of the four candidates. And each of the candidates will have about 60 seconds to respond, give or take. However, if any of the candidates go over their 60 seconds, they'll be forced to withdraw from the race completely. That was a joke. At this time, we'd like to have everyone silence their phones and refrain from clapping, showing a little respect to each of the candidates. Any cheering, jeering, or any of the like. Throwing food is right out. That I got to draw the line somewhere. All right, let's begin. Let's invite our four candidates to the front podium. In the Franklin County Commissioner Position 1 race, Brad Peck, the incumbent, the challenger, Franklin County Auditor Matt Beaton, as well as Franklin County Commissioner Position number 2, Bob Cook is the incumbent, Rocky Mullen is the challenger. Gentlemen, please come up, and you have nice little name tags to sit by, and even some candy bars. You guys can fight over those, I suppose, too. Again, each of these questions will be directed at all four candidates, and we will go in the order first announced, and we'll try to mix that up as we go along. Gentlemen, if you're ready. First question. Do you have a preference as to where the next Columbia River crossing is located, and briefly explain why? We will start with Brad Peck, the incumbent, Franklin County Commission, position 1. Mr. Peck.
So I have he's a moderator, Matt, he makes the rules. So I do have a preference. The preference is that whatever we do for the next Columbia crossing has got to be strategic, and it's got to be multifocal, meaning it can't solve a single problem. We just announced a new national park here that's going to drive a lot of additional traffic coming off of the interstate headed out toward the Hanford area. If the state is going to provide funding for a bridge, or the federal government to provide funding for a bridge, they've already made it clear that they want a beltway approach, which would argue for either a crossing on the northern part up near North Richland that would go into the national park and run across Franklin County, connect to 395, or perhaps down closer to the port and provide a beltway. To add another bridge in the inner part of the city, say from Edison to 68, is appealing and would be convenient and would add to retail transit between the two, but would also add an awful lot to congestion, which is one of the prime objectives of a new bridge, is to avoid that. So I think there's lots of good options out there, but given that we're going to absolutely have to have cooperation from the state and federal government, a North Richland Bridge or a Port of Pasco vicinity bridge are the two options that have the greatest potential to get outside funding. So I would have to think that that would be the way that we'd want to go. Doesn't mean that we can't do things to enhance the existing inner city bridges.
Okay, thank you. And I was so excited to get to the questions that I skipped right over the opening statement. So let's do this. Let's finish the question about the Columbia River crossing, and then we'll circle back around to let everybody have their opening statements. So next to answer the question would be the challenger for position 1. That'd be Franklin County Auditor Matt Beaton. Mr. Beaton.
Sure.
Yep, there you go.
All right, there we go. So on something as important as a Columbia River bridge crossing, you know, the way I would approach that is there is going to be a tremendous number of stakeholders involved. And I think while I don't believe as a Franklin County Commissioner I should drive that discussion with, I'm sorry, this isn't very, I don't believe, I believe my role is to bring the stakeholders together and find a solution so that that bridge doesn't show up in 50 years, it shows up in 5 to 10. So beyond that, I don't have a personal spot that I would pick or that I would personally advocate. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, the incumbent in position number 2, Mr. Bob Cook.
Thank you, Ed. I was.
There you go.
That work?
Yep.
All right. I was involved in the first study, somewhere around 5 or 6 years ago about this Columbia River crossing, and started off with, quite a group from the Tri-Cities. There actually was 10 suggestions, like I say, all the way from North Richland to Dodd Road area and all in between, and adding another lane onto the Blue Bridge. And it narrowed down to 3, which was the north-south and the Blue Bridge. And the discussion is just now coming back again. The state is talking about it. The largest problem is if we go to North County, North Franklin, or North Richland, going into the best place would be to tie into Sagemore, but then you've got another approximately 5 miles of Sagemore that is a 2-lane road that would be another bottleneck. So anyway, at this point, the state's going to have to come up with some money for the bridge and for any upgrades of roads, either Dodd or North Richland.
Okay, Mr. Cook, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Rocky Mullen, challenger for position 2.
Well, this is, as a business owner and looking at the structure where the bridges are at, I mean, my first thought come to my mind would be Road 68, but I definitely think that we have to look at where the future growth is going to be and make the decision there based upon the best use for the community.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll circle back around, get to the opening statements. give you a little taste of what the questions are, and then we'll get to the opening statements. 90 seconds. This time we will start with the challenger for position 1, Mr. Matt Beaton. Matt.
Great, thank you. Thank you to the Pasco Chamber and to all of you for coming today and spending some time with us. I'm Matt Beaton, and I want to be your next Franklin County Commissioner. I want to start by saying right off, Franklin County has a bright future if we emphasize community, collaboration, and work to make sure that everyone is included and heard from in our local government process. We can, and I will, deliver better government. I've been your elected county office auditor for the past 6 years, and I've worked with the community in elections outreach. I've collaborated with fellow electeds and directors in the courthouse to install the software. In the auditor staff, we have worked in county government to improve public works and also the track facility. I have a degree from the University of Washington in business administration. I serve on the Lord's Foundation Board as well as the Pasco Kiwanis. I have the track record, the temperament, and the experience to work with everyone in the courthouse, and more importantly, across the river. And I can deliver on my 3 main priorities. Number 1 is we need to rebuild the failing bi-county partnerships. They're in big trouble. You go to my website, there's 29 headlines from the past 4 or 5 years on how these things are falling apart. Number 2, I would increase the transparency through a commitment to open government. Franklin County is home to the largest and longest fraud in state history. There's no reason we can't go from worst to first and be a model for open government in the state. And third, I would bring back the integrity in the spending and budgeting process. There's also an article on that. Folks, it's a disaster inside the courthouse, the budgeting process is. I would bring priorities-based budgeting, and I would implement it at Franklin County. In this election, we can make this happen, and I'm committed to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to the incumbent, Brad Peck.
Well, good morning. Thank you also to the Chamber for the opportunity to be here and to share our views on a variety of issues. Some of you know my background, but I'd like to take a little bit of the time to give you a quick intro to that. From Ellensburg, my wife is from Cle Elum, been married 36 years now, have 2 grown children. Spent 21 years serving this community and the rest of our country as a United States Air Force officer. Had the pleasure and occasional challenge to serve in the Middle East as well, numerous countries, states in between, and retired in 2003 to get a hometown effectively. Grew up in a military family, went on active duty. So we retired to the Tri-Cities. We chose this place, could have lived anywhere, and we've grown to love it. We bought the old Moore Mansion place, as many of you know, and have restored that and put down roots. In that military time, I had the pleasure of serving at some of the highest levels of our government and got a passion for politics, local and federal. Was twice selected to work for members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Pentagon. Those are the 4-star heads of each of the military services. And working as a one-on-one advisor at that level, you're chosen for and you're retained for your integrity and for your capabilities. And I was pleased to serve 2 members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in that capacity. I look forward to the rest of the forum and having an opportunity to talk about some of the things Mr. Beaton has read. I want to assure you that your county government is not only solid, it's functioning well, it's efficient, and there's plenty of evidence to support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Position 2, challenger, Rocky Mullen.
My name is Rocky Mullen. I'm Rocky Mullen, and I'm running for County Commissioner District 2. My father, John Mullen, was one of the original farmers here in the basin. And I was very blessed to have grown up on the family farm, learning about agriculture and raising cattle. I owe it to my father for my strong work ethic and my strong Christian family values. It is that strong commitment and work ethic that has got me where I am today. I attended Eastern Washington University while working for Safeway Stores Incorporated and entered their management program at the age of 19. I went on then to manage that store for 8 more years. I also worked for Blue Bell Potato Chips Company as the territorial sales manager for the western part of the state of Montana. In 1996, I opened my own business here in the Tri-Cities, and I've continued to operate that business until this day. I also am the owner of Sahara Pizza, which has been in business in Pasco here for over 13 years. My wife and I own Dove Financial Services here in Pasco. We're a financial company where we buy other businesses' accounts receivables. It is this experience I bring with me as I seek your vote for County Commissioner. I know what it takes to run a successful business, from budgeting to controlling costs to negotiating and empowering people to work the job and get the job done right. I look forward to the challenges as County Commissioner and working with the other electeds to accomplish the goals here in Franklin County. I love Franklin County and I'm proud to call it home. I am endorsed by Clint Didier, Dan Blasdale, and the Tri-City Association of Realtors. I'm asking for your vote and your support in the upcoming general election. I will bring new perspective, energy, and a desire to succeed. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm asking for your vote here in November. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bob Cook, the incumbent for position 2.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. Thank you, Ed, for handling this for us today. Some of my background, I grew up in Minnesota working on my uncle's dairy farm and left there after high school and lived in Tacoma for a number of years and opened a business there in middle 60s and ran it until I started a new family in 1980, decided I didn't want to raise another family in Tacoma, so Connie and I and our 2 girls moved to Connell. I have, like I say, Connie, a wife of 40 years this January, and 3 adult girls, actually, and 1 daughter over in Tacoma. My background brings me through the courthouse, and I spent a lot of years in fire service, and I came to the courthouse originally as fire marshal before the election of 2004 when I applied. Since that time, as a commissioner, we are in the county side of it. Each of us are elected to or appointed to approximately, I just looked the other day, I'm on 22 different boards and committees in the each month, or each, not necessarily month, but for the commission. I've got 3 statewide appointments that are voted on by my peers in the counties, 39 counties of the state, and I'm on the board of directors for our Washington County Risk Pool, which is voted on by 29 counties of the pool. So it gives me a broad experience of what I can bring to Franklin County with, like I say, the different backgrounds that I've had over the years. And also, as Rocky said, I'd appreciate your vote in November. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's get back to the questions. And again, if you have any questions, Jesse, Sam, they can come around and pick those up and get those to the podium. Couple of like questions, so we'll combine them into one. And this time we will start with Rocky Mullen, the challenger, position number 2, having to do with relationships on a bi-county level, most certainly Benton County. How important are those relationships specifically with Benton County? And if you are elected, how would you foster those relationships with Benton County and any of the other areas around our region? We'll start again with Rocky Mullen, challenger for position 2.
Our relationship with the bi-county, well, our bi-county relationship is the utmost important. We share the same issues in both counties, and it only benefits us and them to work together. The issues and problems that we do face don't stop at the river, they go back and forth. We have to get along with Benton County, and we have to work together to come up with a solution that is going to work for both of us. We need each other. And as far as how are we going to accomplish this, I just believe we need to sit down and put any past differences aside and figure out what is going to be best for the community and work forward towards those goals, and goals that are obtainable and that will benefit both counties.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cook.
Thank you. Working with our Bi-County counterparts through all the different functions that we serve together on, I get along great with the three commissioners over there, and I have, since I've been here, and since they have been over there. They've all been elected since I've been here. One of the problems that I may have brought up myself is I was looking for something one day on the county and the RCWs and found part of the RCW that says that we cannot make a decision outside of our county seat, which brought up a concern of mine because we would have joint county functions back and forth across the river, and anybody could go and realize that we were making decisions outside of our county seat and eliminate years worth of decisions that we'd made. So that led to some legislation that I tried pushing forward that came out and did allow us with that legislation to meet across the county. So like I say, part of our problem, I think, was could have been initiated by me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peck, incumbent, position 1.
So the issue of the bi-county relationship has a few really fundamental parts, and there isn't time to go into a lot of detail, so let me just hit those fundamentals. One is that the relationship is a function of the board on either side of the river, and where one side is 70% of the population, the other is 30%, the side that is 70% consumes 70% of the program resources and pays that share of the cost. On the other side is 30%. That's a perfectly natural, understandable relationship, and nobody has an issue with that whatsoever, myself included. Where the rub is, and this is a part no one ever seems to want to describe or discuss publicly, is that these are two separate independent elected bodies, legislative bodies. And Benton County has expressed publicly that because they are 70% of the population, they want 70% of the vote on decisions, on policy and on budgets. Well, what that does is that allows a 70% majority in Benton County to levy policies that can equal expenses and fees and taxes on you, even though you never voted for anybody in Benton County. So the relationship 70-30 based on population, consumption, and shared cost perfectly makes sense, not an issue with it. But when it comes to the policy part of it, it has to be an equal vote between two legislative bodies. That's all we've asked for. Secondarily, I'll point out that for many years, I don't think anyone in Franklin County on the board, and I don't mean to tarnish anybody's reputation, but there was a lack of people willing to stand up for Franklin County. I have done that politely, professionally, but firmly. Recently, they said that we owed them $665,000 of your tax dollars for a subsidy in the juvenile justice program. I said, sorry, the numbers don't make sense. We offered to get an independent CPA. We let them pick the CPA. We would pay for it, and we'd all agree to live by whatever that CPA said. And the answer was no, don't want to do that. Well, in time, it resolved itself when they realized that their numbers weren't accurate. In fact, it turns out they were just a wag.
Going to need you to wrap up, Commissioner.
They
Peck.
floated it to see if we would pay it. And one commissioner stood up and politely said, I'm sorry, the numbers don't add up. That's the kind of commissioner you need. Bi-county relationship's very important, but somebody has to stand up for Franklin County.
Okay. Challenger Matt Beaton.
Would you repeat it one more time? I was listening to their responses.
Sure. It's the relationship. How important is the relationship, whether it be bi-county with Benton County or any of the other municipalities? How important, and what would you do to foster that?
Okay, thank you. Clearly, this is one of the big reasons I'm in this race, is that there was several other things, and then as I sat back and witnessed as auditor the impact of these dissolving relationships, I realized we need someone in there who will value these partnerships. A good partnership is based on, understanding why we need each other, and I don't know what's going on here, but understanding what it means to us in Franklin County. Make no mistake, we are in bad shape. We've been thrown out of one. The director of another is suing us, and they have shared their desire to unwind others. And all I need to do is give you an example of the one we were thrown out of. I say thrown out when actually what had happened was, to quote one of the commissioners, our commissioner commented he must have lost the letter in his in basket. It was the Office of Public Defense. That office was started in 2007, and for years we paid $6,500 for administrative costs that were shared across all of the entities. Our costs now this year have gone up to $10,000 to administer the same program. The budget from 2007 forward had run between $500,000 and $600,000, and their budget request this year is over $1 million. Now, in that budget, they've rolled in some costs out of juvenile, but the point is, this is a perfect example of why we need each other. And in fact, in these relationships, we need to know why they're important to us, understand how they translate, and what it costs for us to go it alone. Because to have something, just the administrative cost to double and to see the overall costs go up, it's unacceptable. And I think most people in the Tri-Cities, at least when I've been out chatting with them, they think of us as one community. And that's exactly what I will do, is know what Franklin County's priorities should be.
Need to wrap up.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I want to remind everybody that the responses to the questions should be kept to 60 seconds. I know that's difficult in some respects, but please, we've got a lot of good questions that we want to get to and get as much information out to the people as possible. Thank you. Next question. How would you bring financial solvency to the track facility in Pasco? Let's start with Mr. Bob Cook.
Bringing solvency to the track facility is, it's been ongoing since the day the track was built. That type of facility, I have never done a study on it, but as far as a personal, but I understand that there is no function venue like that is in the black. They're a boon to the area they're in. Look what happened after track was put into Road 68 for the Pasco. But as far as trying to work closer to a flat line, I think our new administrator is doing a stellar job in doing that. He moved some people around, changed some internal workings, and he's been much closer to a flat line this year than we've had for a number of years.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mullen.
Well, first of all, I think we need to get a plan and stick to it. I believe that when track was originally built, we were supposed to retain the land around it and sell and put it out as leases, so we would get the money off of the lease and retain ownership. But since that time, all the land has been sold, so that plan didn't work out very well because they didn't stick to it. But I do believe that we need to find a plan to make the track break even. I think that the added value of track to our community is unmeasurable in ways that can help our youth, give activities for them to do, keep them involved in equine activities out there rather than nothing to do and getting into trouble. So that type of added value that helps our community is sometimes not looked at or taken into full measure. But I do believe that we can attract more businesses from the outlying areas, maybe from Seattle, where they can come over and put their equine events on in our facility. And when those people come, they're going to spend their money in our restaurants and our hotels. And I think it will be a big benefit to our community.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Beaton.
So I think the narrative on the track is changed. At the auditor's office, we challenged the status quo at track. During the public works fraud, we discovered that the track self-reported the ownership of cash machines. I pressed the commissioners at that time to try to do something. Ultimately, I worked through the state auditor. There was a finding on the cash machines, and it resulted in a performance audit in the private sector from Clifton Larson Allen. On the back of that, we have a plan. What they did disclose is that for 20 years, there were no policies and procedures that were recorded. I was shocked by that. But the fact is, we are working on getting some now. The new management team there is operating that fantastically, and it's a great example of, and I believe if we can operate that no longer at an $800,000 loss, if you can get that down to $100,000 to $150,000 and work with the community, empower the track board, we can you know, we can save that venue. People love the track. They love the richness that it brings to our community, and it's important that we keep it and not sell it.
Thank you,
So,
Mr.
thank you.
Beaton. Mr. Peck.
So there's actually a pretty good statistical argument that the track isn't losing money. If you could quantify the retail sales tax benefit, the property value enhancement and the development of Road 68 and all that we gained from that, I think you'd find that the losses at the track, while unfortunate, are minimized. There's tremendous economic boon from that facility. January through June of last year, the track lost approximately $240,000 before paying any bond indebtedness. Same period this year, it was positive $7,000. The difference is largely in getting new management in that looked at labor costs in particular and started quantifying balance sheets based on each individual event and learning which ones pay for themselves, which ones don't. The goal at the track should never be to make a profit. The goal should be to provide a world-class, or as close as we can come, facility for our citizens on a break-even or nearly break-even basis. The economic boon that comes from that area, though, should not be overlooked. We're on the right path now, and with respect to the audit that was mentioned, it was actually the commissioners that approved and funded that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question. The growing population of Franklin County, we all know, can be a positive and a negative at times. Each of the candidates, if you can, in as briefly as possible, talk about balancing that population growth, keeping up with the county functions on a budgetary need, as well as the needs for infrastructure, and balancing the budgetary needs of the growing population with the budgetary ideas in mind. And this time we will start with Mr. Beaton.
So, my understanding, you're saying just managing the growth of the county and its impact on county government? Is that?
Yes, as well as addressing the needs of the public.
Sure. For me, obviously, I'm the auditor for the last 6 years, and I'm running to lead as the next commissioner. I think the most important thing we can do is bring more efficient government. We have, one of the things I would press for is an accountability and transparency report. That's part of the worst to first. And it would include self-disclosing things like the number of settlements that we give and the dollar amount. It would include things like self-reporting findings and management letters. The Herald is not, doesn't have the reporters it used to. We should report the number of public records requests, the time and cost of that. So the number of, and the last one that's a personal favorite, is the number of closed meetings that we have. We should self-report these things. It will drive better government, and it will serve the people of Franklin County much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peck.
So it sounds like Mr. Beaton is running for the state legislature because most of those functions are held tightly at that level. Counties are challenged with a sustainability equation that, frankly, in the next decade, if we don't change some things at the state level, will bankrupt counties. By state law, if we collect $1 in property tax this year, next year the most we can collect is $1.01. So there's a hard cap. The rate of increase in revenue for counties as compared to the cost of providing the services to the community are vastly different. The sheriff will tell you, for example, the cost of providing public safety services is on a steep upward curve while the revenue line looks like this. That's going to force us into efficiencies that the public is not going to like, frankly. We're going to have to strip away parts of county government that are not mandated. And one of my great concerns is that we have some seriously unmet needs with respect to mental health services, and we're going to find a way to provide for those. But in the sustainability issue, it's going to be really tough to do. So just with respect to what it looks like for infrastructure and for county operations, the kinds of efficiencies that Mr. Beaton thinks we're going to find in-house, absolute drop in the bucket. We've got to have much bigger, broader, more strategic thinking than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's now to Mr. Cook.
Yes, the way I understand the question is basically directed more at Pasco. Franklin County, unincorporated, that the county commissioners have any bearing on whatsoever, are not growing at the rate that Pasco is. There's a few areas out in our northwest corner outside of our UGA and Pasco that are on the radar for roads and intersections. But for the most part, it's a Pasco internal problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mullen.
I believe that, our growth management lines are already in place, and that we just need to have a plan as far as where we're going and how we're going to get there. I think there's issues that can be, that need to be addressed even with the bi-county relationship, and that is our mental health issue. And developing a one-stop program where we can take some of the relief off of our jail system and provide a better service for our community. So I think that we need to step back and look at the future picture of where we're going to go and how we're going to run it efficiently to get to meet our goal.
Okay, thank you. Next question. And this is along the same lines, but specifically dealing with a business tax. What is each of your individual vision and role as a county commissioner to help build the business tax base in Franklin County? This time, we will start with Mr. Mullen.
Well, I think that we need to promote small businesses in Pasco and be very careful of the restrictions we put upon them. We need small business in Pasco. Small businesses collect the sales tax that further benefits our county. And sometimes I see growth that is restricted when it should be expanded to where it's more beneficial for us. When you go out to dinner, do you go out to dinner in Pasco or do you go out to dinner across the river? It's those things that you have to stop and look at. Where are we spending our money and where are we putting our tax money? Because if you cross the river, Pasco does not get any of the tax revenue from that. And I think if you want to support your community, you need to support your local small businesses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cook.
Yes, as far as economic growth, business-wise, we need to get outside of our Pasco city limits to benefit the county to speak of. We talk sales tax, for every dollar or every penny or whatever, however you want to do it, sales tax that's generated in Pasco, county gets 0.15% of. We need growth outside of the city limits of Pasco, whether it be ag industry or cattle industry or whatever it may be, but we need the economic growth outside of the city limits.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peck.
So every time we build a house in Pasco or in Franklin County, the property taxes generated by that house, on average, don't pay for the services that property needs, whether it's police, fire, whatever it is. That makes business, retail, light industrial development critically important to keeping your taxes down. I set a personal goal about a year and a half ago to start working more closely with the Port of Pasco, which, by the way, in the state of Washington, your port districts are your economic development agents. Participated in rewriting the Franklin County Economic Plan this year, and specifically binding us to the port and to our communities and sharing the state economic development revenue or dollars that we get with the port, specifically to work with the people whose expertise is that kind of economic development. We have a real imbalance now between business tax, residential, and the goal really needs to bring in that other tax base. The next big one that you're going to see here in Franklin County is going to be the AutoZone distributorship down toward the Port District, and I think that we need to do two things. One, attract additional development of that nature, and the other is to avoid typecasting or stereotyping Franklin County in that all of our industry has to be ag related. Ag is a huge player here, but let's also diversify as we grow. Let's look for some high-tech development, for example, to add in Franklin County to build that tax base.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Mr. Beaton.
Thank you. So, again, I think I would say that the port is absolutely critical in building that strong relationship through the economic development policy that we have. As a small businessman, which I was for 8 years, I understand the taxes and the costs of trying to start businesses. My position is anything that we can do to grow business, working with partnerships and entities that are better suited to do it, as well as inside the county, whether it's the land use, regulation, any of that. I've been a small businessman. I understand the importance of growing the industrial and the industrial and commercial base. That's one of the reasons we're upside down with our schools. I'm an appraiser for 17 years. We did not put in enough balance between the land uses. And we need to work to fix that. And I think finding the important partners and fostering those relationships is the path forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Thoughts on the state of mental health and access to care in the area, but specifically in Franklin County. And let's start with Mr. Cook this time.
That is probably for us, for the state, for instance, it's between the education and mental health is going to be quite a discussion. For us locally, it is one of the bi-county functions that we really need to stick together on and come up with an organization of some sort that is as Rocky called it, a one-stop shop for mental health, where you can the sheriff's department can bring in a candidate, for instance, instead of going to jail, go in through a medical checkout and go into a rehab rather than a jail rehab. So it's going to be a ongoing problem until we can come up with enough revenue to build something of that nature.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mullen.
Well, I do believe that we need to step back and take a look at what is going to be most beneficial for our county in the long run. We do have to work with the bi-county relationship to strengthen this and come up with a plan. There has been recommendations that we have Bear County come up and take a look at their one-stop program, where instead of taking our mental health issues or putting the burden upon the jail, we would take these individuals that are picked up. Because sometimes, if they're picked up for jaywalking or whatever may be the case, it's not our police officers' obligation to determine whether they're mentally fit or not. But with at least a one-step program, they could take them there, evaluate them, and treat them, rather than taking someone who is possibly mentally off and taking them into jail and taking their clothes away, taking their medication away, and putting them in an isolated cell. I don't think it's going to benefit. It definitely is the worst thing you could do for them. But these problems are not going to go away. We've always had this problem, and we will always continue to have these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Beaton.
So this is very clearly, anybody that's received the paper understands that the bi-county human services and the relationships we have there have been a nightmare, and especially for the people who are in them and that count on them for services. It's been going on, and I think the key is, as we've seen in other bi-county relationships, is based on the current makeup of the board, is to bring in somebody from the outside. I know that when Benton County wanted to use Rick Weaver, we had a problem with that. I do support the Leon Evans in the Bear County. I think that's going to be key to finding the commonality that we have not been able to find on our own. It's been going on for too long, and I had a letter to the editor. The person was it's just not good, and I think most of us in this room that's followed it understand it. So I would emphasize best practices and implementing and finding commonality.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peck.
I suppose I should be flattered when I start to hear all of my points being made by other candidates and commissioners. There's one person up here who has made 2 proposals in the last 7 years as to how we would actually build, fund, and operate 24/7 a mental health triage facility and do it with no net increase in our taxes. I didn't get a whole lot of support from my fellow commissioners because it included the possibility of a 1/10 of 1 cent tax, which, as I've said, could be offset elsewhere. Thought it was notable that Mr. Beaton referenced a holdup with Mr. Weaver. I was that holdup. I was the only person out of 6 commissioners who stood up and said this is a problem. There are 4 different levels of conflict with him doing the work that we wanted to contract out, but nobody else wanted to stand up and publicly say this doesn't pass the legal test, let alone the smell test. And to everybody's credit, we finally got everybody on the right track, and we hired Leon Evans from Bear, Texas, and we're on a good path now. You'll find no more strident supporter of improving our mental health programs than me. When the police encounter somebody on the street who is having a mental health crisis of one sort or another, they just aren't equipped, nor can we expect them to be equipped to do an on-the-fly diagnosis of whether or not the person is on drugs, is mentally ill, or some combination thereof. The problem is the only solution we give the police now is to treat them like a criminal, take them to jail, and aggravate their circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Peck.
Thank you.
We are up against the clock, so unfortunately we didn't get to a couple of the questions from the audience. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to give their closing remarks, and we will start with Mr. Matt Beat.
Thank you, everybody. I want to start by saying I have the endorsement of the Tri-City Herald, and the reason is they understand the importance of the Bi-County, and they understand who will work to fix it. I also have the support of 2 state-level, one retired state auditor, Brian Sontag, who I worked closely with, supports me, as well as Secretary of State Kim Wyman has written a nice statement regarding my work with her. As your auditor in the past 6 years, I've worked with every department to drive the change and progress that Franklin County needs. I've worked to live up to my campaign commitments of integrity and transparency. As the years have gone on, I've tried to live by the leadership principles that include establishing a clear mission and vision with the team, and communicating expectations, but more importantly, valuing the people I work with, helping them build their careers and to have meaningful work in their own lives. Franklin County needs new leadership. I'm committed to the goal of delivering that leadership. I care about this county. My wife and I and 4 kids, we live here. We have a senior in high school all the way down to 2-year-old little Juliana. I'm going to be at this for 18 more years. And I'm committed to the success of this county. I would appreciate your vote and look forward to this presidential election being over. Right, staff?
Thank you, Mr. Beaton. 90 seconds, Mr. Peck.
So the endorsement list looks like this. The Washington's, well, let me just summarize. It's everybody but the Tri-City Herald, who seems to be hung up on the notion that we should bend over to Franklin or to Benton County's will, regardless of the truth and regardless of what's right. But that list includes the Franklin County Farm Bureau, the Washington State Farm Bureau, the Tri-City Association of Realtors, the Home Builders Association of the Tri-Cities, nearly every Washington State elected representative serving the 8th, 9th, and 16th districts, your state representatives, every one of them endorses me. At least 2, perhaps more, I hope, of the Port of Pasco commissioners are on that list of endorsements, and many others. Mr. Beaton has made a couple of references to the disaster and human services. You know, the 2 counties voted 5-1 to fire a human services director, in my opinion, and I'm not at all reluctant to say it publicly, without cause. 1 commissioner stood up for you, stood up for the potential legal suit that you're going to have to pay for, and said this isn't right, and I'm not going to stand for it. That's leadership. It's easy to go with the flow. It really is. My life would be so much simpler. But I do this job because I have a deep passion for Franklin County and for serving the people of Franklin County. And I ask you to reelect me and allow me to continue to be your advocate. The bi-county relationships, let's be clear, are very important. I support them 110, make it 1,000% when they serve the people of Franklin County, which is 95% of the time. But when they don't, I will be there to stand up for the 5% and to be your voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mullen.
Well, I am a lifelong resident of Franklin County. My family's been in the agricultural and livestock business since the 1800s. I am deeply rooted in agricultural and the cattle business. I'm also a business owner, and I know what it takes to get the job and get the job done right. Over the past 20 years, I started a company here in Pasco where we work nationwide, and I've had clients such as Sony Pictures, the U.S. Army, big corporate events like Tommy Hilfiger. I mean, I've done the pregame party at the Super Bowl. Not only did it the Super Bowl pregame party, also at ESPN's party, MTV's party, and a party for the Cleveland Browns all on the same day. So I know what it's like to orchestrate planning and commitment to get the job done. I am a Christian, and I am proud to be from Franklin County. And I believe as a commissioner, I should be an extension of the people. And I believe that growing up here, I have a fairly good idea of what our county is about and the future for it. I will bring a fresh perspective to the office along with energy and a passion to succeed. And that is why I'm running for county commissioner, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Cook.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for spending your day with us. I know a few of you may be a holiday today. Courthouse is not one of them. But my background leads me to the commission and in a directive of self-employment, knowing how to budget. A conservative Christian, and this next few years are going to be tough on Franklin County's budget. We've had some issues that have arose in the last couple of years that it'll be another couple of years before we are clear out of them. And I think that we just need some solid direction going forward to get us through that low period. So I would appreciate your vote in another couple of weeks. I think you'll see the ballots by next week, I believe. And voters' pamphlets are out there, and so get a look and please vote. We've been short of voters the last couple of elections, so step out and get your neighbors involved too. Thank you.
Thank you to all four candidates. Brief round of applause for all four. Again, this will be broadcast on the Pasco City Television Channel 191 on Charter Cable here in Pasco. It'll also be available online, pasco-wa.gov/PSC-TV. Appreciate everybody's time.